Hey folks, in this chapter of the video, or should I say, like, in this video, I will explain to you if the previous one we talked about some reference analysis of blockout and why am I even doing this. On this one, I want to talk about, you know, pushing your assets beyond what it's offering you because, when I see people using assets sometimes, and I'm guilty of this as well, right? Don't get me wrong. Sometimes they just use it as it is. And I get it, it's fun. It's playing Lego and all that stuff, but sometimes you want to paint your Lego, right? You want to, even when people play with model kits, they still want to paint the model kits. They probably burn some to create some damage effect. They even reshape it, cut it out. It's the same idea, right? So I want to explain ways that I work with my assets in order to fit it within my pipeline. So let me open something for you. Okay, here we got Megascans, right? And the absolute easiest thing that you can do with Megascans is because it's already really good, is obviously to just pick a material, right? Let's say we want to pick something like a roofing part, okay? And I want to choose this one. And I'll export it into Blender. Then I'll assign it to a plane. And usually that's it, right? Usually that is, as far as we would go. But I think the absolute easiest thing that you can do with this to make it even better is, and to reuse it, is to, let me make it wider. Press G 3 times and, drag it at any axis. G 3 times and then G again and then any axis. Okay, that will do that. And let me turn on screencast keys. Now, the point that you can push beyond this is actually really easy. So you subdivide it like enough, like maybe that, right? And then you go to displace, and then you go to your material, you duplicate this guy, you open, and you just navigate into the displacement. Okay? When that's done, you want to copy this name, you want to press new here, press this, and then you paste it here, and then you go back and then you make sure the coordinates are UV. All right? And you see it's already UV. And now I can tweak the strength. Then I'll get like a really good roof tile like for free basically. And with not a lot of polygons as well. Obviously you can go even further if you want, right, with the poly count and all that good stuff. But just by doing that, it's like 10 times better, and it's an actual 3D asset. Obviously you can solidify it if you want, right? And it's an actual 3D asset which you can play with. For example, if you want like a rounded tile, then you can either press Shift W according to that axis, right? And then you'll have something like that. Or you can play with the non-destructive route, which is stuff that I really like doing a lot. It is the simple deform, bend, and I'll just bend it like so usually, okay? And bending things will give you sort of a organic feeling to things and make it less 3D, so to speak. So I sometimes bend it a little bit like that, but not often. And I only do it when I want to edit some curvature rather than Shift Wing, okay? And you can also, first of all, go to edit mode and shear it. You can press Control, Shift, Alt, and S, and then choose the axis. In this case, I'm choose Y. And then you can shear it like that. Then you'll have that kind of a roof, and you can reuse it a lot, right? Okay, so that's the first thing that I usually, and it's the same for ground, for rocks, right? If you find some kind of a material like a, I don't know, like a concrete wouldn't work perhaps because it's too flat, but something like this, that's jagged would work really well with that displacement. And you might ask, why don't you use the displacement in the shader side, like using this in the GPU? Well, the reason for that is because I don't really like putting all the brunt of the work in the GPU, because if you do this, it's gonna be very GPU intensive, and it's going to eat up your VRAM like there's no tomorrow. By the way, you'd want to turn on this stat. Okay, go to preference and system. I think it's system, or is it interface? Yeah, it's interface, I think. Anyways, viewport. Yeah, so you want to turn on the. Let me see. I kind of forgot where I turned that on, but anyways, I'll just give you a screenshot of that. But yeah, there's a tangent, right? There's a proof I have ADHD. But anyways, that's the first thing. Okay, and it'll add your VRAM, eat your VRAM, and I like using displacement here because I want to see what it's gonna look like. If you're doing it from the shader side, you know, if you don't have your displacement on, then it's gonna look like this, but I want it to look like how it's gonna look like in the final as quick as possible. And it's easier to work with your composition this way as well, rather than doing this and having to render. And it's gonna make the process slower. You're not gonna enjoy it as much, right? And the point is to keep that flow, to not have an interruption to that flow. So I think I really like this because of that. And what if you want to change the size? Then, well, that's easy. You can just go to edit mode, go to UV editor, and just edit the UV. Like just scale it up or scale it down, and you'll have like a size change. I think that's way better. Like rather than doing it from the shader side. Okay. Okay, so that's the first trick. Now the second thing that I want to show you is, I think it's already obvious, but I'll demo it for you anyway. So let's say I have this beach rock formation. Okay, maybe something I have already downloaded, so you can do it fast. Okay, so let's say I have this thing like Icelandic terrain here. Okay, I'll export it, and then again I'll do the same thing that I did here, which is, instead sometimes I would use it as it is, right? Obviously, there's nothing wrong with that, but if I'm looking for something more dynamic, then if I have to spread this thing around, okay, and rotate it from this viewport, it's going to repeat really fast. And the easiest thing that you can avoid that with one button is duplicate it and then press Control M and then press, any axis you want to flip it with. And then by flipping it, you'll get that other side flip side, and when you duplicate it around, it's not going to look as much repeaty as, it would usually be. And that's also something I do a lot. And another thing, let me turn on EV and ambient occlusion. Another thing that I do is also, I would go to, I think it's already obvious, but we can obviously go to simple deform and deform it a bunch of times. Okay, in any axis that you want. But, it will give you like this interesting ground flow, which you can use to lead your composition, the eye of the viewer, right? That's pretty cool. Or you can do it with Shift W too. It's gonna rotate based on that axis, but whatever you do, that's the stuff I do a lot as well. And I also sometimes would push the material, right? I would probably put some color ramp in the roughness. By the way, specular should be 0.5. Megascan sometimes has a bug, but yeah, I would sometimes push the roughness like that to make it more interesting, to make it catch more light, especially if it's like overcast or rainy, right? Sometimes I would also, to make it better, to make it read clearer, is sometimes I would, let's say we duplicate it, and then we need EV, we need cycles for this, but you'll see. Sometimes I would apply to my asset like a, yeah, let it render. I would apply to my asset a layer weight, okay, and then I'll mix this. Okay, I'll mix, And then on the specular, this is 0.5, which is this value right here. And on the vector, I'll plug in facing. And here, on the specular, I'll put this to 1. So what does that mean? That means the face that faces away from us, which is in this case this face faces away, it's going to receive more specularity. That means more, a clearer read. That's kind of artificial, but it sometimes can make your read stronger. If you're trying to do like some kind of a plane separation type of thing, right? It can be a really neat trick. So you have that kind of side specularity that happens. Okay. There's another one, but I don't really do this a lot. Sometimes I do it if I really need it. I think I do it here. Excuse me, I did it here, but it's not as strong of an effect too. So I really use it really, really sparingly if I really need to separate the planes. But that's an option for you. And then another thing that I'm going to show you to how to get creative with your asset is, let's say we have